What's up, Grant?
What's up, man?
Grant Skeldon, huh?
Yes, sir.
What's your middle name?
Andrew.
Grant Andrew Skeldon. That's gas.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that's why.
In high school, how often did you do that? Like gas?
I wouldn't tell people that usually, but that's funny. You went straight to it.
Dude, I'd never heard your middle name until this moment.
Yeah.
And that is gas. To start this conversation, I wanted to do something real organic, keep it fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Subway. I don't know.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm going to read you a quote. You just tell me what comes to your mind. Search for a person who claims to have found Christ apart from someone else's prayer, and your search may go on forever. I don't even remember putting that quote in there.
The first thing that comes to mind is Augustine's mother. She's kind of notorious for being known to be a praying mom. And I feel like my mom was like that. He was very wayward and his mom always prayed for him. Finally got saved and very inspired by a preacher named Ambrose. And I don't know, I was related to his story because I was wayward. My mom was always praying. Then I came to Christ, and there was a guy who really inspired me post Christ to be not just a Christian, but like a leader.
That's good. That's rich. Dude, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah.
To the Unshakable show. I know you've heard of us. I know we're everywhere. So I'm sure you're honored to be here.
I've been waiting. I've been waiting for this moment.
You've been waiting for this moment for years. Yeah. I'm glad you're here.
I watched 8 Mile on the way into this.
8 Mile?
Yeah. I didn't, for this moment.
Just lose yourself in this moment for real. I was thinking about you and how to intro you. I don't want to get too descriptive about your whereabouts and what you're up to.
Yeah.
I want to keep you kind of like vague and mysterious for the listeners. But a phrase that came to my mind is when rappers say, I'm your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. You ever heard someone say that?
That's a good, I see where you're going. Yeah.
And it's like, hey, if you haven't heard of me, your favorite rapper has. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the vibe there. So it's like, I'm not like pop famous, but like the real ones know. You're one of them guys. The real ones know you. I feel like there's a lot of prominent leaders that have probably at some point brushed shoulders with you. You've got this call on your life. Yeah. It's very specific. I only know one Grant. You know what I'm saying? Like I'd never really heard of someone like you until we had the privilege of meeting you. But you have this passion to connect leaders across the country, across the world probably, but at least in the U.S. And there's 3 words that kind of mark what you're trying to do. You love to create unity. You love to help young leaders navigate culture and live in spiritual health. We're not even going to talk about that today, but I do just want to commend you and just like start out with me saying, I really think you walk in a just unique anointing, man. And the more I've gotten to know you, like you're not just out here trying to like wheel and deal and know a bunch of famous people. Like you actually have such a heart for the kingdom, and not even just in church. Like you like to connect with business leaders, artists that aren't like Christian artists, but that do love Jesus and help them like know each other and all for the sake of the kingdom, man. So anyway, I just honor you for what you do behind the scenes. Like there's a lot of people that probably don't even know your name, but man, what you're doing is really, really important, really impactful. And then also you have another passion, and that's what we're going to talk about, because we're in this series of who am I becoming? Trying to challenge young men to ask that question. Hopefully it gives them like this like sense of, oh, like I need to have vision for my life. And we've already talked about this before recording today, but one of the primary places we get vision outside of like prayer, walking with God, reading the scriptures, is through discipleship. And you specifically have a real grip on this next generation coming up.
Yeah.
And I want to pick your brain a little bit and kind of ask you some questions about this next generation and what do they need to know? I think there's a lot of people that want to be discipled, that want to have someone to follow. And I was asking you about this earlier, and you had a lot of good things to say. So I want to talk about discipleship with you. Grant, you ready?
Yes.
All right, cool.
Sorry, my bad.
No. I know what I'm doing. My bad. First, let's start off by defining discipleship. How would you define that?
Yeah. For me, I use the concept of, there's the phrasing, frequently following someone who is spiritually a couple steps ahead of you. That's always been what I've said, frequently following someone a couple steps ahead of you. However, in the last year, maybe 2, I have added something at the end to frequently follow someone who's spiritually a couple steps ahead of you. to become more like Christ. Because sometimes it could be us making and replicating others to be more like us instead of making them to be more like Christ. And even the idea of like, I'm becoming like Christ and failing even forward to become more like Christ. Because, and I don't know how much time I want it, but every word there I specifically chose because I think frequently doesn't mean it has to be weekly. Doesn't even maybe mean it has to be every other week, but it does need to feel like I'm frequently with this person. I'm joining them. I use the word following because I think a lot of time it's the idea of meeting with someone. I would even say for many years, the idea of discipleship has been limited to or labeled by the idea of like memorization. So it's like, if you go through this book together, then I'm discipling you. And I don't think it's memorization. I would say it's more replication. Like I replicated myself and now you go replicate yourself. So frequently following someone who's just spiritually a couple steps ahead. I like putting a little bit of emphasis on, it doesn't even mean like, again, become like me. It's just, join someone who's just ahead of you. Like, cause a lot of people will feel like they're not worthy to disciple anyone because they don't have a glorious enough life. Even older people that we look up to or we ask to disciple us sometimes feel like, man, I don't know if I'm as impressive as I may look when you see from afar. Like you might be disappointed, or if they're honest, sometimes they don't feel worthy. And I say, but do you feel like you're spiritually steps ahead of me? And they're like, well, yeah, technically, yes, I am. So I think it helps relieve this pressure that they need to be perfect, or they need to be this great author or orator. And then, to become more like Christ. I think that takes the weight off. So I always tell anyone who feels this pressure of, I need to be good enough to impress this young person who I'm going to disciple, instead feel like, no, actually they're okay with your imperfections. They're okay with you even failing. I think it's actually beautiful for us to see Christians who fall and then by the whole power of the Holy Spirit get back up and continue to go. Because there's a quote by John Maxwell where he said, if you want to impress people, share your successes. If you want to impact people, share your failures. And I think it's helpful for older people that may be asked to disciple or to not feel this pressure of, hey, you need to be perfect or you need to be successful in all these ways. Could be like, no, you're sharing some of your failures, but that impacts me because I'm going to remember how you walked through that journey in the valley of the shadow of death and how God was with you. And that speaks way more to me than, hey, I did this, it was perfect. I did this, it was great. You should read my book. You should do all these different things. And you don't see any of the shadows or the difficult seasons. And so, and to know, again, it's not on you. Paul didn't say, hey, follow me. He said, follow me as I follow Christ. And so becoming more like Christ, not becoming more like me.
You spend a lot of time, I feel like, thinking about paying attention to the next generation. What do I even mean by that? What kind of age range am I even talking? Like Gen what?
A couple years ago, definitely millennials had a long run. How old are you?
31. Don't ask me that.
I'm 32.
Man. Come on,
so
are you older than me?
Yeah, I am. So
bless the Lord.
We were, I think they talked about millennials for at least 15 years. Usually we got boiled down to skinny jeans, and we were known for whatever reason, participation trophies. I always say that's interesting because our parents gave us those. You could have given us a Capri Sun, but instead you gave us a trophy and then blamed us years later for it.
I was not ready for this direction.
And I feel like skinny jeans and probably being offended easily. That I think that that we are thin skinned.
Let me bring us back real quick. So with this next generation,
yes,
like in that 20 to 30-year-old range, how common is it that for you to see like discipleship relationships? Like how often do you come across young people that go, man, I've got someone that I am following. It's a few steps ahead of me that's helping me become like Christ. Is this a very common thing?
No, definitely not. I would say it's pretty rare. It's definitely the Great Commission. I would say it's Jesus's last words, therefore should be our first priority. But it's not something we culturally even call Christians to in church. I mean, if I'm even asking you, when was the last time someone asked you who you're discipling, who wasn't on staff at a church?
Man, you got me with who wasn't on staff.
Yeah, because I think in church staff we ask, but like, do Christians ask other Christians who's your disciple?
Because I'm asking people a lot.
Yeah,
but that's a great.
It's just not
great point.
Common, and I think in our culture, like but you would get asked like, hey, did you go to church this week? Attendance, maybe even do you give? Oh, do you serve? But we don't ask, do you make disciples? And so I think we haven't normalized discipleship, or at some point we denormalized discipleship. And technically, Barna did a research study and found that I think only 4%. Sorry, I apologize. 17% of Christians would say that they are in a committed relationship to where they meet regularly to pour into someone younger than them. So only 17% of Christians have committed to doing something in the direction of the Great Commission when it comes to go and making disciples.
So part of the heart of this conversation is to start normalizing, like, man, like if you're not in a discipleship relationship, like that's like, other than your personal relationship with God, that's like priority number 2 is to have someone. And I want to ask, like, and I don't want to spend, the chunk of our time, we're going to help people actually seek this out. So in the next like 8 minutes, let's talk first. What would you say, like, if someone's like, I want to be discipled, but who should I be looking for? Like, what makes someone qualified? How do you look for somebody? What type of person should you be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to look for when we look at people that we ask to disciple us, we tend to look for character competency. It's like, I think you look for someone who, like, hey, I've been watching you, I've seen you from afar, and I love what you do, and specifically how you do it. It's so authentic to you, or it inspires me. Just, you could tell you love the Lord. Can you teach me how to do this like you do this? Maybe that's a career, maybe that's a gifting, maybe that's a talent. And then sometimes I think it's character. It's like, man, you're just such a good father. You're such a good husband. Your prayer life is different than when I see other men or women pray. It just seems like you don't just pray like you're hoping God would answer. You're praying like you know this man, like like you expect him to move because he's good. Like, I want to know how to have that kind of intimacy with God, that I pray like that. So it's more maybe character, or, man, the way you act, walk in forgiveness, or I mean, Bob Goff is a guy who walks in such joy. Like, it's a joy that he has. I'm just using names people know, like Francis Chan. It's not just that he's a gifted communicator. It's like, man, the angst and the devotion, and him, or David Platt, like, there's like his heart for the nations. That's character. So anyway, I think it could be character, it could be competency, but yeah, you're right that it's getting back to normalizing discipleship, that this is something. And I would also say, if we don't normalize discipleship, we lose the next generation in 2 ways. One, because they literally always say, hey, you should disciple millennials, because what do you think you already think millennials are terrible. What do you think, how bad do you think it's going to get when millennials who didn't get discipled are now discipling Gen Z, or now Gen Z who didn't get discipled are discipling, I guess it's Gen Alpha after them. And 2, we lose them because I think the next generation is dying to be a part of a community with a cause and a mission. And that is the Great Commission. Jesus' mission is very enticing, I think, to the next generation. If I could come up with a campaign for discipleship, I would probably come up with, let's say, a red hat, and just on that red hat, just say, make the commission great again. Simply.
What? Dude.
Like, it's a great commission. We already know it once.
Do not make that hat. You understand me?
So I made it once. I made the hat once. I wore it, and then I felt immediately nervous because I'm like, hey, no one's seeing this hat. They just see a red hat with some words on it. But I just know.
Yeah, they're definitely assuming it's about discipleship.
Of course, I'm not trying to be political at all. But when I see that common statement that we all know, I'm just like, man, the commission is literally, it's not just called the commission. It's called the Great Commission. And I think when we water it down to, I just go and, there's 4 calls to action: go, make disciples, preach and teach, and then baptize. Those are the 4 things. And even if we just quickly talk about the church, we take all those other things seriously, except for discipleship. It's the only one that we're kind of like have this organic approach towards. Like, organic is the most common word I ever hear associated with discipleship, where you ask a church, what's your strategy for discipleship? And they're like, we have more of an organic approach towards discipleship. And I'm like, organic? I'm serious. I never see
it's
organic.
It's a gotcha moment for you. You're like, gotcha.
No, I mean, to me, organic, I'm half Mexican, I swear. Organic must be Spanish for, we don't really have a plan for it, but we hope it happens. That's what organic really means, because no one's organically doing it and it actually happening. And even just to prove a point, I mean, if God called us to, again, go and make disciples, so go, make disciples, teach, baptize. I've never seen a church that approaches teaching organically. They're not like, hey, who feels it this morning? Who wants to teach? We would never do that. We have strategic meetings to plan out series, who's preaching, what's the text. We're very strategic. We would never go in organically to preach because it's a big part of the Great Commission. I haven't seen a church that organically baptizes. Like, hey, you got saved. And they're like, I want to get baptized. I'm like, yeah, great. I'm curious to see how you do it. Like, we don't just say, just go figure it out in the rivers or your hot tub. Like, we have classes to make sure you know what you're signing up for. We have weekends usually dedicated to baptisms. It's very strategic, not organic. And then going. I mean, we don't see churches that say, hey, go do missions, figure it out on yourself organically. We vet our partners. We invest in certain partners that we know, hey, this is trustworthy. This is good soil. We actually, one of the worst things you could do is just tell people, just go and serve in the way you think you should serve. There's literally a book called When Helping Hurts to talk about how you should be strategic to work with the indigenous people that you're trying to serve in other countries and not just create what you think you should organically create for them. And so I just always been thinking, how do we do all the other parts of the Great Commission strategically? And Jesus did discipleship strategically, but we're doing it still organically. And so as long as it's organic, I don't think it's really going to happen a lot.
One thing that when I'm thinking specifically about like that, 18 to 32-year-old range and the lack of normalcy in discipleship, it's not normal to see a lot of discipleship relationships around you or to be around even discipleship culture. There's a hard truth that I want us to spend like 3 minutes covering because I really want to get into how to seek this out. Yeah. But I think a hard truth is, but a necessary truth is that if you're 20-something, you want to be discipled, it's on you a little bit. Sorry. It's on you. Full stop.
Yeah.
Like it's probably not magically falling into your lap. And I want you to speak to like, if you were talking to a 20-something-year-old and they're like, I really want to be discipled. How would you challenge them? Like what do I even mean by that? Like it's on you, it's on your shoulders to find this.
Yeah. I would say, if you don't use your single years to seek out discipleship, you'll lose one of the most important times of your life where you had the most free time in your life. Like the older generation, what they have is, I think the greatest thing that they have that we don't have is wisdom. They also have finances and they also have networks or relationships. If the older generation, in my opinion, has network, they have finances, or at least more than the younger generation, but especially they have wisdom through experience, through pain, through wisdom. There are lessons learned. What our generation, I think, any next gens, especially singles, they tend to have innovation or creativity. They're born into a world that's maybe a new technology or new things in culture, which is great. They have creativity. They have a lot of passion. Take any dying thing or even plateauing thing and add a whole bunch of young people to it. It will revive it and bring new energy. And so there is passion and energy, but especially what the next generation has is time. Like there's this window of time where I would always say you don't have to ask your parents for permission anymore when you're a young single in college or after college. And you don't yet have to ask your wife or your husband for permission. Like you can just go and do things. You can Sean, who's a part of this, he's about to get married. He's actually about to lose a lot of time. I got married about 2 years ago, and I knew when I was signing up for, hey, before I get married, I want to squeeze everything out of this time because I'll never have as much free time as I do now. You never meet a married person with kids and a full-time job who's like, man, it's Friday right now. No one with a full-time job, married and kids is thinking, what am I going to do with all my free time this weekend? They don't get that. And so I would say if you're a young single, you want to make the best use of your time, for the days are evil. That's what the Bible says in Ephesians. And one of the best things you can do is, yes, hang out with good community and Christian community, but don't only hang out with young people your own age. I would say really fight to tithe time to older generations, because you'll thank yourself 20 years later when you see the trajectory of your life will be different because you spent it with older people. I also say looking for mentorship, looking for discipleship. I was thinking this morning, if you wait till you're older, you're like, well, I'll seek out mentorship when I'm older. What I found is if you're young and you ask someone older to disciple you or mentor you, give you advice, they actually will give it for free, but it'll cost you your time. But if you ask when you're older, they won't give it to you for free. They'll cost you money. It'll be called consulting. It won't be called mentorship or discipleship. They'll be like, yeah, I mean, I'll give you advice on how I do what I do, or how I got to where I am, but you have to pay for it. Like it's consulting. And so I would say seek it when you got some older person that's like, man, I see a fire in this kid and I want to pour into them. I want to help them. They remind me of myself when I was their age. If you just hang out with young people, it's not bad. I just would liken it to Lord of the Flies, where you see these kids on an island making their own rules. I don't want to ruin it for any kids that haven't read this, but Piggy dies in the end. Like this was required reading for school, so it's kind of on you if you already didn't, if you got this ruined. But we don't want that to happen. It doesn't go well when we just make our own rules. It's like
seventh graders asking seventh graders for dating advice.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the blind leading the blind. So again, good intentions, but seek those. Like you wouldn't want to ask a seventh grader for dating advice. You'd want to ask a married person who's been married for 10 years for dating advice. And we're missing out when we just hang out with our own generation.
Yeah, we have to prioritize discipleship. We have to seek it out. I think I would encourage young guys to like honor the people they're asking. Now we're going to get into how to ask someone. Like if you really find someone like, man, I wish this guy could like influence my life. But I would say like you need to put it on your shoulders to make yourself available to honor them, to show humility, to show responsibility, to show tenacity. But let's get into what it looks like to ask someone. So if someone goes, okay, I'm prioritizing discipleship and I've got someone that I would love to disciple me. You broke down like 7 steps to asking someone to disciple you that I thought was really powerful. So let's enter into that scenario. I'm 23. Someone wants to disciple me. What should I do?
Okay, just so I have some of the backdrop, can you share, and I don't fully know, I know we've talked briefly, can you share just briefly what was your story of getting discipled? Like,
oh yeah, okay.
Did you pursue them or did they pursue you?
I went hard in the paint.
Both? Or?
No, I went for them. It was Dave Clayton, and I heard him preach, once, and was like, dude. And I'm a preacher, so I was like, man, this.
So this is your first time to the church?
First time at the church.
Okay.
And I obviously, I'm a nagger, so I went up there and was like...
You talked to him first time?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I went and found him in the lobby. Everyone's trying to talk to him, and I'm certainly one of them. And I was like, hey, my name's Joshua Solowey. I'm a freshman at Belmont. I'd really love to meet you, like get coffee, whatever. Here's my email. Yeah. Nothing that crazy happened. Emailed him. Nothing happened. Emailed him again. And
like
then...
literally no response.
I don't think that I got a response. Because there's there's a lot of people in that church.
Yeah.
Finally, I set up a coffee meeting with him at Portland Brew and just kind of told him what I'm passionate about, what I was doing at Belmont. And I don't remember this very well now. My memory kind of sucks, but I remember, I'm sure I just lavished compliments on this man. Like, man, I want to do what you do, and not just what you do, but how you do it, like the heart in you. I just remember being so blown away by the man he was, and really tried to let him know, like, very specifically, like, man, the way you talk, I know you don't talk like that unless you really love God. And I would love to be influenced by you. I want to get close to people that talk about Jesus the way you do. So I definitely went out of my way and chased him down for sure.
Did he shift? Like, do you feel like after that ask and that request was clear, did he kind of shift and say, okay, come to this, or let's do this together? Yeah. Or did you keep having to pursue? Or it
started with like, hey, let's hang again in a couple of weeks. Okay. And we just kept getting to know each other. He started asking me questions, getting to know my life story and what I'm about. And then eventually it led to me going, hey, could I intern? I'd love to intern. Maybe he brought up the internship actually. And that's when I was like, oh boy, we're in now. That's like cool. I got to go be at the office whenever I wasn't in class and being a barista or working at a laser tag place.
Yeah.
And so any chance I could get to be around, he kept kind of opening the door more and more. And wherever that door was freaking open, dude, good, I kid you not, man, I was running through it. Yeah. I was like, eventually it led to me fundraising, $7,000 a year just so I could give part-time hours to the office hours. It's just like, man, I'm just trying to get here. I was hungry to be around that guy.
Do you feel like you'd be the same man you are today if it wasn't for that?
No chance. Like, yeah. He's drastically shaped how I view prayer, how I view God, God's view of me, what being a pastor actually is, what it means to have a growing church in a good way. He's changed my whole life.
Yeah.
He's only second to probably my parents, is that guy.
It's good. I mean, I think that and even what you just said, like, we have to fight for it because it doesn't matter. You said he made himself available. Like, older people can make themselves available, even make themselves vulnerable. But if we don't fight for it and like carve the time out, I think of like even yours. I didn't know you raised money. You raised money to work for him. Like, let me raise money so I can work for you. And that's how much you were hungry to do it. And also it paid off. You're saying you're totally different because of it. It shifted the trajectory for the rest of your life. And I think James and John, when Jesus sees them, they're in the boat with their father. I believe Zebedee is his name. And he says, come and follow me. And it says they immediately left the boat and went with him. And I just like that idea of like the no chance like that there's anything better, is that like I sold everything I had to buy this field. Like it's so worth it to do that rather than keep hanging out with my friends. You still got to hang out with young people in your own age, but the best young leaders I know, the most mature, godly, humble, gifted young leaders I know nationally almost always have great mentors. There's someone who invested in them, kind of even gambled on them a little bit, like gave more time, put their neck on the line, gave them responsibilities bigger than they deserved. It's like the change and milestone in their story. And so
hold on. Tell the Tim Keller story real quick.
Okay.
That you talked to me about, because what you just reminded me of my own story is that persistence. Like if you want to be discipled, like dude, like go hunt it down. Like have some grit, have some patience, have some persistence. Like, because you're talking about this guy, and I'll fast forward just a little bit, but he's like a former gang member, just came to Jesus, heard Tim Keller talk, and he's not used to Christian culture. Mm-hmm. So he's like, I'm gonna go talk to that dude that just talked, not knowing Tim Keller's a substantial deal. He's got a lot of people that want to know him. Goes up to him, will you disciple me?
Yeah. Happens? So this guy, Demos, he's in New York City, former gang member, 6'6", kind of big dude, sees Tim Keller and went right before he goes into his prime, or like this huge season of like busyness, writing all these books. And yeah, Tim Keller, kind of like you said, Dave, almost, which kind of said, hey, yeah, here's my assistant's email. Maybe reach out to him and he'll maybe find some time where we can connect. And Demos, who's again former gang member, new Christian, doesn't know the Christian rules, for better or worse, but probably in this situation for better. He doesn't do politically correct. He's like, bro, you just talked about discipleship, and I'm here coming up to you telling you I was a gang leader. Now I want to make disciples. How would you not just meet with me? Give me your number, not your assistant's number. And Tim Keller was like, I guy's thrown off. He's like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. And he gives him his number and says, okay, yeah, let's get together. And I mean, long story short, that Demos, who's just such an affable guy, but he was very wet behind the ears, very new believer. But man, he had that passion and that persistence to follow him and join him. And he ended up becoming the first church plant that city to city ever sent out, which is Tim Keller's church planting network in the Brooklyn area. This dude's a prayer warrior, like story after story of who he has now become. And I know a big part of it is the mentorship and discipleship of Tim Keller. And I just think, yeah, you got to fight for it. And I think anyone, and I don't know, maybe fighting is not the right word, but it's like persistence of, man, this person will not go away. I even think of that, Jesus saying like the nagging person who's like, won't go away. Is like, okay, I want to help. There's two scriptures or stories where this kind of happens too. In Ruth, we see Naomi say to Ruth and the other woman, after basically, hey, you guys can go ahead and leave. Like your husbands have passed away. You don't need to stay with me. You guys are free to go. And Ruth says, do not urge me to leave you or to turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you live, I will live. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. I mean, if someone says that to me, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to argue with you. If you're like that committed to stay with me, to stick with me, I'm gonna be where you're. I'm gonna go. Yeah. Like I see. I can't get rid of you. So I almost again, I always say like you want to. I bet you they got to where they got because they were like that when they were young. And so I can't tell you how many times I've seen young people show that kind of that fire, that angst, that persistence. And again, in an honoring way. You don't need to be obnoxious. But it shows them, man, this is good soil. Like if I would say, they want to see momentum, that you already got like the character that, it's like you're on fire, and if they pour into you, they're pouring gasoline on a good fire. It almost makes them think, man, what would happen in the next 6 years, 10 years if I did invest in this person, because they're clearly already going. I need to transition
this because I've already let this go on for too long, and that's my fault. But to sum that up, before we get into how to ask, if there's someone you look up to and you're about to ask them, you need to demonstrate to them there's a pre-existing fire. Mm-hmm. I'm just asking for some gas.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to start a fire in me.
Yeah.
Because that's a tall task. Like when someone goes up and they tell me they want me to disciple them, but then they're late, they don't show up. Oh, I forgot about this, whatever. I'm like, dude, do you want it or not? Like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't mean waste my time in a cold way. But I mean, like, I want to run with runners.
Yeah.
And I think it does mean a lot when you show up going like, I got a pre-existing fire and I'd love for you to help grow it in me. You're much more likely to get someone to respond positively. So let's get into it.
Okay.
How to ask. So someone needs to ask someone. They're ready to be patient, persistent, grind, go for it. 7 steps to asking to be discipled.
Yeah, I mean, you already said one of them. Show the momentum.
We've got 12 minutes.
And what I mean by momentum is you got to be faithful, available, teachable, and hungry.
That's step 1.
Yeah.
Show the momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead.
The second one would be, I think if you found someone you want to ask, I would say, like, be clear with them. Why are you choosing them? Like, there's this 4-letter word that kind of is intentional where it says, I see in you. Basically, like, this is what I see in you. And it shows thoughtfulness. It shows intentionality. Like, hey, I've got this momentum is what I would say. Something you would share what that is, of how you've been entrusted with bigger responsibilities, or you're moving, or you're hungry. And then 2, I see in you this characteristics, this gifting. I admire the way you just, whatever intentionality you can see in even the nuance of like how you do this and how you do that. It shows like, man, I've been watching you from afar, and I honor and respect the way you do it. And I want to one day do it like that as well. I think that's really important. The next thing is,
hold on. I sped you up too fast. That's my fault.
Go ahead.
So the first thing, if you're going to approach someone to be discipled,
mm-hmm.
explain to them, you said show them the momentum, but basically going, man, here's what I'm hungry for. Like, here's what I've been doing. I'm trying to grow in the Lord. I want to grow in evangelism, or here's the things I'm currently doing in my spiritual journey.
Yeah.
In essence, what you're saying is, hey, I'm not like just whimsically, like just kind of randomly showing up to you. I'm already, that's that pre-existing fire you're showing.
Yeah.
And then the second one is to, honestly, it sounds like I see in you, is to honor them and say, hey, I've thought about you thoughtfully.
Yeah.
I see you doing these things. You pointed out like Francis Chan and his angst and his hunger, and David Platten for the Nations. But so maybe it's someone that goes, your work ethic.
Yeah.
I've just noticed, or the joy you walk in, or you just seem like you're patient.
Your hospitality, like all these different things. Like, again, I'm naming people that are like really well known, but it could be the guy in church that's just like, man, you just love on the next generation well, and everyone else has kind of been dissing on us and talking about our skinny jeans, and you came by and you did this or did that, and it means a lot. Like you almost expect us to like be one of the greatest movements of God. Like you expect nothing but the best out of us, and it calls us up to something, just whatever it could be that shows like nuance, and you're thoughtful around what you see.
So show momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them what you see in them.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously you want them to disciple you for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Number
3 would be clear on maybe 2 to 3 areas you want to grow. One of the most intimidating things I've found and heard from older leaders that get asked to disciple is if you just say, hey, will you disciple me? It's such a big word. It's a very scary word, to be like, hey, I'm really, really trying to learn from you how to do this, do that, maybe become like this, like you are this. And then it helps. It creates a palpable request for them where they're like, okay, I could do that. Yeah, you're right. I am pretty good at this. I'm not perfect at it, but I have something to offer there, especially to someone younger. And it seems like this is a bite-sized start. And I actually would say it to the young person listening is like, it may just start with those 2 or 3 things. And I see this happen every time actually, is it starts there. But the more you show that you are faithful, you are available, you are teachable, and especially you are hungry, they will entrust you with more wisdom and more of their time, and become even more robust than, hey, you're learning these 3 things, though you'll learn a lot more because they see you are good soil. Yeah.
So kind of naming, hey, 1 to 3 things, meaning like, I feel like you're good at time management. Could we just talk about my calendar? I want to be efficient. I feel like you like love scripture. I really want you to help me love the Bible. So can we get together and talk about scripture? Or it seems like you discern the Holy Spirit really well. What the freak even is that? Can we talk through how you hear from God? And can you help me and ask me good questions? Like if you kind of bring it to earth a little bit more, they're more likely to go, oh, I can help you do that. Because discipleship can be a little intimidating unless it's maybe a pastor. It's like, yes, I'd love to disciple you.
Yeah. There's so many practical things. I mean, your testimony, I heard that you came from a broken home or divorced parents, or you're the first Christian in your family, or you're the first to go to college. All these, there's so many things. It's like, what do you feel like is your disadvantage? Which I would just say God could definitely use as actually your advantage, but also who are other Christians that God has almost used what the world would call a weakness and turned it into a strength, and then talk to someone that's 10 steps ahead, 20, 30, 40 steps ahead in that. And you're going to save a lot of pain, you don't want to keep hitting the same wall over and over again when someone's already hit that wall and is willing, because we're brothers and sisters in Christ, to share the insight so we can reach more people in the kingdom.
Okay. Number 4.
Number 4 would be, I always like to let them know I actually don't need any of your time to do this. And usually they're really surprised by that. Like you say, like, what I mean is, like, I don't need you to meet with me at all. I distinguish between discipleship and mentorship. I think often when we think about discipleship, we're actually thinking of what I would consider mentorship. Mentorship is come and meet with me. I think discipleship is come and follow me. Both are really good, but Jesus didn't say to Peter, hey, come and meet with me once a week for 3 years and you'll be ready. Though if they did meet with Jesus, because tons of people met with him once and had their lives changed. So again, not one is bad and one is good. One is good and the other is very, very powerful and robust, and that's discipleship. I would just say, if you say, I'm not looking for you to add me to your calendar, like mentorship, because a lot of these guys, the reality is they don't have time. So when you beat them to the punch and say, I'm not looking to add one more thing to your calendar, I'm not looking for a weekly meeting or even a monthly meeting, I'm looking to join you. So to me, mentorship is adding something to your calendar, while discipleship is including someone in your calendar, and you can join them. And that also means, dude, that's where the hungry piece comes in, is, are you hungry enough to tithe your time to be not with young people, not chilling, not playing video games or watching Netflix, or honestly serving at the church sometimes, or doing all these different things that are, again, are good things. It means instead of hanging out this Friday night with my friends, I'm going to go hang out with this older man and his kids, and we're going to go to dinner together and then go watch a movie, or we're going to do whatever.
So basically right here, you're saying, like, I'll join you in what you're already doing. Like, if you're going grocery shopping Thursday evening, can I meet you at your house, hop in the car, and tag along for you to get groceries?
Yeah.
Like, if you like to go running or you work out at 6 a.m., can I join you? Like, in other words, you're taking the pressure off of, I don't need to squeeze into your calendar.
Yeah.
I actually want to just, what you're already doing, I'll just show up and be there. So I can honestly change by osmosis. I can just be in your presence and watch you live life.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me a minute to share the story. Okay. And an example of this, just to really nail down this point. People don't have time. That's a whole nother sermon. Everyone is busy. We like glorify busy, and especially great leaders, or who we want to be mentored by. They definitely are busy. That's why we want to be poured into them, because they are great leaders, and we admire certain things about the way they lead their families or whatever it may be. And so a story for me is one of my most recent guys who poured into me. His name's Raymond. He is the architect over Walmart, and so he doesn't have he has the third largest architect firm in the nation, because Walmart's huge and it's everywhere. And he's a very, very busy man. He's on the board with City to City, the Church Planning Network, IJM, and helps the executive producer for all these big movies like I Can Only Imagine, all these different things. It makes him way too busy to ever have time for me when I asked him a couple years ago. However, I got a meeting with him, which took months, similar to the Dave thing. It's like, hey, yeah, let's meet. Okay, actually, my assistant says later. Oh, actually, now that won't work. It kept getting pushed back for like 3 or 4 months till we finally got to meet. So I knew when I meet with him, if I really do click with this guy, I got to find a way to actually join his world, because meeting with him, mentorship, is not going to work with this busy guy. And so I found out what he likes to do for fun, which is one of the points I'll just go into this next, is find out what they like to do and try to join that. If you can join what they like to do, that's the best. And
is that number 5?
I knew, yeah. Okay. And I knew that what he liked to do was run. For whatever reason, this man or people actually like to do this thing called run. And not only do they like to do it, they like to do it at 5 a.m. in the morning and really early. And then they like to post their participation trophies online and show you that they did it. They put a sticker on their car. And even though I don't
hear any tone in your voice at all. Yeah, go ahead.
I just think, anyway, we only have a short time. But I would say, so this guy, again, took months to meet with him. Loved the guy, so humble, unbelievable man, and so intentional. And I said, hey, later that night, I did get his number. And later that night, I texted him and said, hey Raymond, I'd love to get into running, man, and I know you run a lot. Is there any way I could ever run with you? Now, I'm totally lying for the kingdom. I did not want to get into running. Like, why would I want to?
Yes.
But he said, okay, if you're serious, meet me tomorrow at 5. I'm like, this classic 5 a.m. runner kind of guy.
Gosh.
So I meet him the next day at 5 at his office, downtown Dallas. And I love to say, Josh, this is one of my best stories of discipleship. But this bro didn't show up. And I'm there for an hour, downtown, dark Dallas, not where you want to be. And then about 7 a.m., when normal people wake up, he texts me and said, I'm so sorry. When I said meet me tomorrow at 5, I meant 5 p.m. like after work. And I was like, bro, yeah, how are you gonna say if you're serious, meet me at 5? Like, it's just hard to show up after work. But I didn't say that, of course, but I just thought, honestly, immediately I thought, bro, I'm so thankful. I love it. I love it that because I'm thinking this dude now thinks that if I did need to show up at 5 a.m., I'm that serious to show up. Like, and I've walked with this man, run with this man. I've done so many half marathons with this man that since then, like I ended up, I would just go. I've gone to Dubai with him. I've done so many different things. I've been with his family several times. He spoke at DTS, a seminary that's really respected. So many things that I've done with him where it started just running with him. And then he said, hey, you want to go to this? I'm doing this on a movie set that we're working on. I'm doing this and that.
All right.
Okay. I'm just
Dubai,
saying, I'm just saying, that it's my point in going back to like, it starts with, hey, can I maybe join you with your family? Can I join you in your personal life? Can I join you in your work life? And then it's like, I think they start really admiring, and it's reverse discipleship, they call, where he would say he's learned a lot from me. Though I've learned way more from him, I've brought in new life to his life in a lot of ways too.
That's really good. And the principle you're sharing, to be clear, like I'm being lighthearted when I joked about Dubai on the movie set, but like the principle's real. Like if you're willing to show up to what they already enjoy, like that's a sneaky little life hack to get around people you respect, and just being around them, living their life will have an impact. All right, we've got like 1 minute, so get your next few steps, and we have 60 seconds for you to tell us them. Yeah.
I would just say, be careful with the word disciple. I think feel them out. If they're a Christian that use the words disciple a lot, and it's not going to be intimidating to them, then maybe say, yes, hey, will you disciple me? But you also got to give them a lot of grace that a lot of people that you may ask to disciple you never got discipled themselves. It is a loss of discipleship in our culture, and it didn't just start with us. And so give them grace when they don't feel equipped or qualified. That maybe you might use, hey, will you pour into me? Because that's less intimidating. Would you pour into me by teaching me how to do these 2 or 3 things, and I'll make the time to be around you. And then especially, this is the last one. So just whatever, you might say mentorship, you might say discipleship, you might just say as simply as will you pour into me? And then the last one is, don't just see it as something where you're a burden on them or you're receiving from them, but as quickly as you can, try to take things off their plate. There was a guy who was a speaker who discipled me, and I was like, man, if I could drive a car so you can just get in your notes or make phone calls or whatever, or I'll carry all your stuff up to the podium and I'll bring the podium up after the band is off, or if you forgot something at the hotel, I'll drive real quick. You don't even have to worry about it or be nervous to ask. Like the more you take things off their plate, that's what the disciples did for Jesus. Like eventually he sent out the 72 to go out to these cities and these places, and it seems like they went without him. Like he eventually replicated himself, because clearly he even eventually left the mission to them. That you want to like make it easier for them just as much as they're making it a better life for you.
Man, if I could encourage our listeners, I'd say you need to rewind it back, do it, but write down those 7 principles, try them, apply them to your context. It's very obvious your context is so specific, but the principles you're naming, like I can personally testify in my own life, but also to just what I see around me. These work. This is very effective. So if there's someone you respect and you want them to disciple you, apply these principles. I got 3 questions. You can only answer in 5 seconds or less because we're already out of time. All right. 1, what's a book or podcast that's impacted your life recently?
How I Built This.
By
Guy Ross, I guess.
Okay. Number 2, what specific area of your life are you trying to improve right now?
Being a husband.
Love that. Number 3, what's a prayer God answered recently?
Sorry.
Did he prank you?
No, I'm thinking of other awesome friends that have been on this podcast. The prayer he's answered recently, just my brother moved in with us, and I have the softest spot for him, and I love that we get to have him in our home, and my whole family has now since moved to Nashville to support him too, and it's just been a domino effect of God showing up in ways I didn't even pray for, honestly, beyond my prayers.
It's awesome, man. Grant, I love you, man. And I have a lot of respect for you. And I hope people listening understand the wisdom that was just shared. There's a lot of gold in what you just said. To end this, you remember 30% of what you see and hear, 70% of what you discuss. I'm going to stop pointing at you. 80% of what you experience, 90% of what you teach others. This is a fantastic conversation to take beyond just hearing it, seeing it. Apply this. Go talk to some friends, write some stuff down, pray about it. And the last thing I'll add, pray for someone to disciple you. Like, do your part, but also ask the Lord, will you light the way for me? God, I really want to be discipled. If you pray that desire out, I really believe that's a prayer God is very invested in answering for you. All right, Grant, love you, brother.
Love you.
See you guys.